Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the PPC Den podcast. I am your host, Michael Erickson Facchin, and I am joined by our amazingly talented guest co-host for the last few weeks, Brent. How are you doing today? Have you been cycling lately?
I have not, but the confinement is soon to be eased here. So Saturday I will be on the road.
You're going to be on the road. How many miles will you go? Or kilometers or kilometers?
Well, I can work in old money too. It's okay. I guess in terms of miles, 45, 50 would be a solid ride for me these days. Yeah, that's a nice afternoon out.
Right on. Mm-hmm. Up in the mountains.
If I can get to them, yeah, weather permitting and everything. Exactly.
Beautiful. Awesome. So we are going to be revisiting a topic that we've talked a little bit on the show before, but I still see it happening. And in fact, I see worse iterations of it. And it is something that we've called in the past the keyword dump. And that has merged with the product dump to have an ad group inside your sponsored product campaigns that I believe is like an anchor bringing down your ROAS and just accelerating. It's a great way to increase your ACoS. In fact, when people write in and they say, hey, can you take a quick look at my campaigns? Without a doubt, going in there, I can feel my spidey sense tingling. I know that they have this particular campaign structure is alive and well in their account. And it's the keyword dump. It's the product dump. It's where you have a sponsored product with an ad group with keywords, a lot of them, potentially over 100, and you have a lot of products that you're advertising inside that ad group too. Sometimes I saw one last week, 700 or so keywords in it and about 500 or so products in it. We're going to talk about why this is not ideal, why this is bad. And it was funny when prepping for the show, I was like, all right, let's have a section about why this is bad. And you're like, why is this good? There's no reasons for this. So we're going to talk about why it's bad and what to do instead. Brent, what is your 30,000 foot view on these ad groups with hundreds of keywords and loads of product ads inside of them for sponsored products?
Sure. Well, first of all, we do audits on accounts on the regular. Sometimes in a busy month, a couple per week, usually one per week. We see a lot of accounts. However, you have, I think, a better perspective as a software provider, right? So you see probably far more than we do. Mm-hmm. And so you opened my eyes to this. We certainly see the keyword dump move. We even call it the same thing. I think that's thanks to the Ad Badger naming pedigree.
I'm not good at naming things. I'm really not.
No. I think keyword dump is an excellent name because it kind of conveys how it feels. The word dump, it doesn't make you feel good. And that's how a keyword, structured campaign like this should make you feel. Not great. Yes. So I think it really hits the nail on the head there.
Fair enough.
Now, when you're telling me there's all these products, hundreds of products, that is something I rarely see. Mm-hmm. So you kind of blew my mind a little bit, just as we were talking here before the call. Now, I think, why is it good is maybe another take on this. Not how is it bad, but why is it good? And I think this is maybe people taking the idea of 80-20 and just going to the utmost extreme and just saying, hey, let's 80-20 it, put them in a campaign, get it in there, go ahead.
80-20 of the 80-20 of the 80-20.
It's the 2% of the 2% effort.
Well, that's kind of warped a little bit. It's like you're doing very little effort for very little result as well, because you shouldn't be doing this. However, it is really, really pervasive. And I have a theory about where this comes from. A lot of times when this happens, I'll ask people hey, where did you see this? Where did you get all these keywords? And, a lot of times the answer is some tool. And the tool they punch their product or they type in a seed keyword and then they get a huge amount of output, all these different related things. And what's difficult about that is a lot of times those tools are sort of like SEO or product research tools, which is just giving as many ideas as you possibly can. Because when you're doing SEO and product research, you want as many ideas as possible. It's like, if I'm going to be selling coasters, I can type in the word coaster and potentially see something like coaster shaped like dogs. And that might not be the product that I'm selling, but it might be a cool idea for me to go and research to see if there's a lot of competition centered around coasters that are shaped like dogs or something, whatever, like dog coasters, something like that. So like using those SEO tools could be really helpful. But what I feel like happens is that people will take this list of keywords, copy, paste inside their ad group, and have these very, very large keyword-based ad groups. And what I also feel like has been happening too is large percentage of their product ads inside the ad group. I've seen another situation where, somebody is selling coasters. Maybe they're selling all different kinds of coasters, and they take all of their coasters and they drop them into the same ad group. So now they've got 100% of their products. Maybe it's 15 different coasters. And in some extreme cases, I've seen, over 100 product ads inside that. So they have all of these different kinds of coasters. Maybe they have one that's ceramic. Maybe they have one that's cork. Maybe they have one that's glass. Maybe they have one that's colored red or blue or green or black. They have all of these different variations paired up with hundreds of different keywords. And it's possible that, they're telling Amazon, hey, this black coaster, have it trigger for dog coaster. And so the mismatch that happens is pretty disastrous. And we're going to talk about why this is bad, but really that's where I think this comes from. I think this comes from the well-intentioned, hey, let me go find some extra keywords out there. Like, let me go scour all of the different ideas and then bid on them and see how they perform. And while the spirit of that is fine, I think it misses the bar of what Amazon advertising wants you to do. They don't want you to take so many wild bets on keywords, like hurting your relevancy and mashing up your data and all these different things. So we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls of doing this, as well as what to do instead. Where these seed keywords can come from.
Yeah, and you make a good point there, Mike, which is basically these tools are for ideation, right? This is like exploring an idea space. It's not so much about, here are the things that are super relevant for your particular product. If you just put in a seed keyword and you get a list of things, you're the one, it's incumbent on you to do the filtering and the refinement and the paying attention to all the details of those terms. That's you're the human who knows that. So, the algorithm or whatever system that's in the back end is just giving you the ideation phase. And it's not meant to be simply copied and pasted out of there in any circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, I would add to that list of scanning that list, I would also say it's incumbent on the human to also then test those keywords. So the fact that we're grabbing this, that's why I always think of like you have your tested, tried and true keywords, and then you have your tested keywords. So by all means, like we should be testing keywords, but to test that many, that quickly, in that manner of putting them all in one ad group with multiple products, it all actually like diminishes the testing that you can get. And we'll get into that.
Right.
The first point when I see this keyword dump is that there's a mashup of match types. We've got broad, phrase, exact, all meshed up in the same ad group. And it's tricky too, and I'd love to have you speak on some of this with your experience too. It's tricky too, because sometimes people will, maybe they don't have hundreds of keywords, but they might have mashed up match types. So they've got broad, phrase, exact in the same ad group. And, maybe they have an appropriate amount of keywords, like, 20 or something like that. But the performance is good. And they might say, well, what's the big deal about mixing up these match types if my performance is fairly fine? So I'm curious, tell me about your experience with working with match types in the same ad group when you think about segmenting them, when you think about, or if you approach an account that's already merged up. Give me your framework for thinking about match types, mixed up match types.
Yeah, sure. So I think the best practice, and let me know if you agree, would be to segment match types at the ad group level or potentially even the campaign level.
Yeah.
But there should be some level of separation for them. And that could be done for negative keywording reasons comes to mind. So if you're going to be setting negatives, if there's an exact match campaign or ad group, you're not going to be deploying negatives there. It's simply, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But in places like auto and broad, those have the most open match types. So you're going to be adding far more negatives there. And so if you're adding negatives in, it could have unintended consequences if those match types are of different types inside the same ad group, because you're adding those negatives at the ad group or campaign level. I'd also say bidding strategy probably differs between them. And then trying to have a coherent bidding strategy at the campaign or ad group level is probably the best practice. So it's going to make it harder to organize your bidding methodology. And then just also going through your account and making sense of it yourself. A better organized account is a cleaner account, is usually a better performing account. So if anyone who's a stakeholder who's involved, whether it be the agency, the person on the team responsible for ads, the brand owner, the CEO, if everyone involved understands the structure, that's just better outcomes for everyone. There's a lot less questions going around and problems having to be squashed for no reason.
Couldn't agree more. And how aggressive, if at all, you're taking over an account, they've got mashed up ad groups. How aggressive do you go after that? Where in your priority list? Is this a level 10 priority for you? A level 1 priority? You'll circle back around to it in a couple of weeks. Where do you think of how important that is?
I think it's I would say proper to first assess the performance of these. Mm-hmm. If they're doing horribly and they're really draining ad spend and hurting the account's performance and taking away impressions and spend from other places they'd be much better distributed, that becomes very high priority. But when we first start with an account, that triage cleanup stage, that would be something that would be caught in that early stage.
Right.
If it's doing really well, maybe we'd pause some of the ones in one match type and then leave the ones that are doing quite well there, and then start to shift those impressions to other places for the ones that we paused or downbid significantly. Yeah. It's not usually a good idea to do an abrupt stop where you just put you archive it or just kill it. Mm-hmm. Kind of let it down ezy.
Yeah, I couldn't,
so to speak.
I'm in the same. I would copy and paste exactly what you just said for my approach too, for sure. So when you do this at scale with a keyword dump situation where we've got hundreds of keywords, all with different match types, that exactly what you just said gets exacerbated by a lot. It becomes very difficult to hone in. You're adding a lot of extra steps to hone in on what's doing well, what's not doing well. This keyword might be doing poorly, but maybe it's just a few search terms that are dragging it down or something like that. You're making your life much more difficult by doing it that way. You're making it much harder to have a refined account, which leads to other downstream things, which we'll get to in a second. It's actually hard to have this episode because there's so many things that are bad about having this massive keyword dump with massive amounts of products or a high percentage of your products in one ad group. There's actually so many reasons why this is bad. It's hard to just go one by one because the mixed match types is related to another thing and the next thing. So not only mixing match types, but mixing a keyword strategy where you could potentially have your branded terms and your non-branded terms in there. You could have maybe top of the funnel keywords and bottom of the funnel keywords. You can have lagging converters with strong converters all mashed up. And I know that for me, when I'm thinking about keyword strategy, I want to be intentional about where things are going, why they're there, and what the particular performance goals of that particular bucket are. So maybe it's a different variation we're trying to move inventory for. So that has its own goals. So we need to break out the product and we want to send along some keywords. And then we can actually slow down the inventory movement so that we can prevent going out of stock, and we can do specific bid optimization for that product with those keywords. So to sort of have that available to us, to have that throttle. And you just don't have that throttle when you have all of these mashed up in one. So the account can be sort of seesawed in one direction or the other within the keywords itself and the products.
Yeah, I think the biggest one to touch on is perhaps the branded and unbranded. Because when we have campaigns, when we do segment it at the campaign level, not at the ad group, for branded anything. So anything that counts as kind of branded for a client's brand, misspellings of the brand name, the obvious like exact match high volume ones, those are going to dilute the results in any case. Branded campaigns are typically going to have a far better ACoS and conversion rate, and the spend for those needs to be accounted for properly. Yep. So if you have a couple of like stealthy brand terms, like sneaking in your keyword dump, product dump, this is going to make it look far better than it actually is once you drill into it. And you realize, these two super like fat head keywords that have a high amount of clicks in search are 300 ACoS. Meanwhile, this branded one over here is 2. And in aggregate, it looks pretty good, but actually that's not the reality of it.
Yeah. I was just evaluating a keyword dump ad group, and the ACoS, I forget what it was. The ACoS for every keyword, 0 to 1 orders. So they all these keywords, I had hundreds of keywords, but for 0 to 1, the ACoS was something astronomical. I think it was over 100%. And then the ACoS for keywords that had 2 or more orders was an appropriate like 40% or something like that. So the way that the account was structured, it made it difficult for that person who is managing their own campaigns to optimize them, because they didn't know, they couldn't see the forest through the trees. They were looking at sort of the campaign level, the ad group level. They're scratching their head. They're sorting by, orders, or they're sorting by spend, and the ones that, some of them looked good, some of them didn't. They couldn't sort of pinpoint where it was. And I think this is actually more common. So campaign structure, especially putting lots of products with lots of keywords inside a single ad group, makes it difficult to optimize. So not only a performance, specifications aside, and how Amazon prefers us to structure ad groups, performance aside, it's just hard to manage. It's difficult to manage, especially for a lot of people managing their own campaigns. And the next on the list, we've got starving keywords. And I'd also potentially say starving product ads too.
Both.
So, we're recording this the week of Thanksgiving. So starving tomorrow, I will not be, as I gorge myself on a small, intimate, outdoor Thanksgiving. So with that said, what is this concept of starving keywords or starving product ads?
Well, for the low price of $5 a week, you can help starving keywords in your account. In all seriousness, starving keywords and the idea of products, I think, is also entirely valid, although we usually talk about keywords.
Right.
If you have, let's say, 700, like you mentioned earlier, keywords in a ad group, how many of those do you honestly think are going to get enough impressions, not even to mention spend and clicks, to have any kind of conclusion? What conclusion are you going to draw from that? Right. So you are effectively saying, I think these are keywords that are a good bet, but I don't actually want to give them enough money to find out.
Yeah, exactly. There's this weird mechanism inside Amazon sponsored product ad groups where if you have 500 keywords, I'd probably say, and if you were to sort that by spend, you'd probably only have spend over $10 for maybe 50 of them. And then like the bottom 450 will have minuscule spend, like under $10, under $5, under $1 in some cases. So this concept sort of talks about, it touches on this mechanical thing that Amazon sort of wants to structure ad groups. I don't know why this happens, potentially something with how they're scanning the ad groups and they're not able to, it gets choked up when they're scanning just a single ad group. And it's easier if they're segmented. But this whole concept of starving keywords happens a lot with these keyword dump ad groups where, your top 10, 20% of keywords take up all the spend. I partly think that it's just the ones that got the spend first. So like they'll be prioritized in that ad group moving forward. And I also see it sometimes with product ads too, where you've got loads of product ads, loads of keywords, only like the top 10% of either will really get any significant clicks.
Mm-hmm. If you're trying to drive traffic to your green coaster, to go back to your earlier example, but the one that's black is always selling the best, which is often the case with products on Amazon. The ones that are gray or black or white, more neutral, basic colors are typically the winners. If you put 5 in a group and they kind of fight it out, that one that has the strongest sales and conversion rate is going to rise to the top. So if you have a keyword in there, green coaster, and your green coaster's in there, it's probably starving for attention. It probably doesn't get any kind of matchup with the appropriate search terms and keywords that it deserves. The black one is probably just taking all of the attention because it's the winner.
Yeah, and there are some matchups that it would probably make sense to have the green coaster match up with, but there's no opportunity to really have that happen in this massive ad group. The whole starving keywords thing ties in really nicely with budgetary concerns, where, I think it's interesting. Anytime I consider this, and tell me if you agree with this, Brent, I consider any keyword that you are putting inside your account that you don't have data for yet. So you haven't seen the search term performance in somewhere in another ad group, or you just have very little data for it. If you're putting inside your PPC campaign, it's a test. So like you don't have any data on it. You need to find out if it's going to perform well. If you put in 700 keywords into an ad group, you might need to spend, who knows, $20 in ad spend, maybe 20 clicks, whatever, across 700 keywords. Do you really want to do that? Because $20 in spend times 700 keywords is $14,000 to test. And, that might be fine. But, one thing I think is interesting is we've already talked about how the keyword starving happens in a large keyword ad group. So you have keywords that are going to be starved. So all of your budget is going to go towards sort of the early ones that got the clicks. And then in addition to that, you probably don't have enough budget to really test that many keywords all at once. And I would say the keyword dumping happens a lot more, maybe in budgets less than $10,000 a month in ad spend. So, when you have that, you don't really have a lot of budget to go out there and have such a big percentage of your account be going towards these testing things. So not only does the architecture of Amazon not work here, but the budget concerns don't make sense either for dropping this many keywords into an ad group.
Right. I would say, and that's a great distinction to make with people who are trying to wrap their heads around advertising in general. But the lower your budget, the less testing you're going to be able to do. If you say, oh, we want to spend $100 a day for this month, I mean, you can't necessarily roll out every single campaign type and targeting type with a full complement of keywords. That's not possible. Mm-hmm. You're going to get some of those with spend and traction, and it's going to take you a very, very long time to come to any kind of conclusions, because the rate at which you spend is the rate at which you gather data.
Right.
And I would even go a further step, Mike, with what you said, which is not only is each keyword, once you have, let's say, $20 into it, an experiment, but each keyword at a certain bid level is technically its own experiment. Because what you're trying to do is figure out where the value of CPC is for that keyword. So maybe at $2, it doesn't make sense. But actually at 75 cents, it makes a ton of sense because the return is great and it's getting a balance of that exposure and actual sales that you're looking for, albeit at a lower level of clicks and spend.
That's a really good point, which is very difficult to do because a lot of times with a keyword dump and product dump ad group, there's not that fine of consideration for each keyword. It's sort of just like hack and slash type thing, which I don't know high performing advertisers on Amazon that operate by like hack and slash. I think all the high level advertisers I know are a lot more intentional about each little keyword they have is a chicken that they want to have grass fed in the pasture to make it really easy for them to lay eggs, happy little chickens, as opposed to just like
the factory farming analogy, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. Yes, good.
Yeah, at scale, all in one building.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just like one's not heavy enough at a certain time, like get rid of it. And here's probably from this list, it's one of the biggest ones to not have loads of product ads, loads of keywords inside the same ad group, which is, a lot of people don't even know this. There's no report that you can get from Amazon anywhere that pairs up your product, the product that was served, with the search term that triggered it. Did I say that right?
Sounds good to me. And there's no setting that allows you to choose.
Right. There's nowhere where you can view the product that was triggered and the search term that triggered it, which is, it's so simple. Like it feels like we should have that data. And people probably feel like they look at that data, but there's no report that exists that actually gives you that data, which is kind of crazy.
Right, because I see our job as getting the person searching, the customer, the shopper, as close as possible to the point where they're going to make a purchase. Mm-hmm. And the problem with this methodology is this idea of like the colors and variations. If someone's landing at the black one, but they search for the green, well, that's not exactly the closest point to what they want, is it? Based on their search intent. Mm-hmm. And for many keywords, you can't tell search intent. If someone just puts in dog coaster, well, it could be any color really. And there may be groupings of products and keywords that are more appropriate for that. But if someone is actually going to the trouble and saying green, send them to the green one.
Right. Yeah. So you could be bidding on a phrase match inside an ad group, and the word would be coaster. And however, the person searched green coaster, and you would never know that green coaster triggered your black coaster. Because that information is not available. There's the product ad report, which tells you how your products performed, and there's the keyword report, which tells you how your keywords performed, and there's a search term report, which tells you how your search terms performed. But there's no one that matches all these things up together. So a lot of high-level advertisers will be really intentional about their product ad groups, knowing that like these product ads that are in this product ad group can be completely relevant for everything that is going to get searched from this ad group, or even go as far as single product ad groups, where everything that was triggered in this ad group was for this particular product. So all of my keywords, all my search terms that triggered were for this particular product. So that's really the only way to know for certain what was triggered by your search term, to have single product ad groups. So when you have this massive keyword dump and having a lot of your products in there, there's no way that you can match up that information, and you're missing out on such a wealth of optimization data that you literally cannot access with this campaign structure. And you can't name it properly, can you?
Right. What are you possibly going to call this campaign and ad group? I mean, there's not enough characters provided in there for you to say all the different products that are in it.
Yeah.
I mean, and even then, what would you call it? All, everything, catch all. It's not very interesting, not descriptive, not useful. Yeah. Always try to encode as much information as you can in your naming. It doesn't have to be the same the way that Mike and I prefer to do it. And I'm sure our methods are different for that matter. I'm not sure if we've ever discussed, but as long as you have a lot of information in there at the campaign and ad group level, that's the objective of naming, right? To make it clear and encode information, so at a glance you can see immediately what it is.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about reasons why to not do this. You mentioned the word catch-all, and I do also see periodically, it's not as popular, it doesn't happen as much, but I will often see things like the 20 cent or 30 cent catch-all ad group. And the catch-all ad group is generally I see it as an automatic targeting sponsored product, where it's just a low-cost automatic targeting sponsored product campaign. Have you ever seen a catch-all where they would have all these keywords, but it would be very small? I'm sorry, very small bids for so many different keywords.
Well, I've seen it, but we don't do that personally at Pathfinder. We certainly do the auto catch-all in some circumstances where we have an extra budget that allows for it, because the results for those can be really great. As you know, anything at a low enough CPC can work quite well. 20 cents could be fine. Yeah.
Right.
And that's a place where you're not so concerned about the actual data. You will get data from it. It might not be the most useful, but this is a campaign that's going to make up a tiny percentage of the overall spend in your account.
Yeah. So we've hopefully by now, and you too, Brent, we have driven down the point, because I think this will relieve so much pressure from people about why this is bad. But I also wanted to get to what to do instead. Because, okay, we're going to get rid of this keyword dumping. We're not going to just grab a whole bunch of all of our products, all of our keywords, stick them into sponsored product ad group and let it ride. Let's talk about what to do instead. Here we go.
All right.
So, Brent, do you have a ideal target, something that feels right to you, something that you see consistently work well in your highest performing campaigns, a target keywords per ad group ratio? Like, how many keywords do you generally like to see in there?
I would say between 35 and 60 is a pretty good range, depending on the match type, of course. Let's assume that we're doing open match types, like phrase or broad. That's probably like a good amount, because any more than that, and you start to run into some of these, keyword starving issues, budgetary sharing concerns, and of course, these are all the same match type in there. I think that's probably a good number.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. About 35 or so. Couldn't agree more with generally that's what to rock with. If you are experiencing the sort of keyword dump or product ad dump inside your ad group, how do you like to rectify that? Like if you were to take over an account or someone is listening and they have 500 keywords, 55 products in there, how would you recommend they rectify that?
I think we discussed this and we have the same approach, which is pretty much let's chop off the bottom keywords that are having trouble getting sufficient impressions and clicks and spend, and build a new ad group and put them in there, and then work that into our what do you guys call it? The rip, peel, and stick system.
I like that. Rip and stick.
Rip and stick system.
I like that. I'm really bad at naming things. I think I had a stroke of genius with Ad Badger, but really that was just, I liked the video.
Well, that's the most important name. So
Yeah.
I think your audience understands the concept, right? Where you're migrating these search terms out of these. And so if you're adding new ad groups, you're going to have to accommodate for those new ad groups in your system, in your structure. And that's pretty easy to do with software that automates it, right? So just account for that. But yeah, giving those the kind of space to breathe, so to speak. And maybe it does mean a new campaign where the budget is separate, but sometimes a new ad group could be fine.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I do the same thing. The way that my mind works is I like to grab, so if there's 500 in there, I'll grab the bottom 10%. So I'll start with 50, boom, take those, put those somewhere else, and then I'll like check back in a few days or however. And what I generally expect to see is a net gain of impressions and a net gain of clicks, meaning when all 500 were mashed up together, maybe we were averaging 1,000 impressions a day. And now that we've segmented these things out, maybe we're at 1,500 impressions a day. So that's generally how to think about and why to stop this keyword starving phenomenon that happens with a whole bunch of different keywords. So that's pretty big. That's pretty key. And you were talking about how your team approaches keyword research. And it was almost like when you were listing it out, I was picturing this SOP, standard operating procedure. I was picturing it. And then like one of the steps was like, take a break, look at what you're actually doing, be intentional. Could you give context on how you talk to your team about this sort of intentionality of every keyword that becomes a test?
Yeah, sure. I think this is almost a study in kind of like delayed gratification almost. So you say, I get this campaign going, I'm going to put these keywords in here, put the ad group up, it's set up, set the bids, we're good, next one. But actually, if you take the 20, 25, 30 at most minutes to really take a hand-picked approach to the keywords that are in your campaigns and be super intentional about what they are, you can go through the list and take that extra 25, 30 minutes, because in the long run, that is going to save you so much frustration with, these keywords aren't performing. What did I do wrong? How can I modify the bids on these to make them suck less?
Yeah.
Or we spent so much client money and these keywords weren't even a good bid, weren't even a good test. So take that extra time and front end load your work. Put more time into that at the very beginning, because over the long term, that is going to save you hours. That 25 minutes you put in is going to save you hours of frustration, time, wasted ad spend. So to me, it's kind of like painful at first, but long term, second order, it's good.
Yeah. And lastly, if you have a small budget, you need a small amount of targets. Full stop there. I haven't thought too much about this, like a perfect ideal amount of targets per budget. But generally, I try to recommend that, each keyword has its time in the spotlight. And if you really think about the math there, like if you are dropping in 500 keywords and, every one were to spend $1 a day, which is an incredibly small amount of keywords an incredibly small amount of spend per keyword. Potentially, you can have 500 clicks, one click on every keyword, and have no orders, because maybe every keyword only converts every 10 clicks or 20 clicks or whatever it might be. So I always try to think in terms of like, are we, you can starve the ad group by having so many keywords that Amazon literally can't keep up with the amount of keywords in it. But you can also starve it by just having too small of a budget relative to your keyword amount. Do you have any thoughts on target to budget ratio? I know this is a question that I know I haven't thought of yet.
Yeah, that's a tough one to come up with without thinking about with a few more considerations. But I will say, we have had accounts in the past where they say we have a pretty big catalog, but we want to spend $800 a day. Mm-hmm. And it's peak seasonality, for instance. We know the conversions are good. So it's like, okay, well then we're going to have to make a decision on the management agency side to say, we can only really place bets on keywords that are super bottom of the funnel, super clear bet, because we know that the conversion rate for those is going to be great. So we can make the ACoS look really nice. But what we're not doing there is learning much of anything. We're not really exploring some of the mid-funnel, upper funnel, new ad types, new campaign types, and testing things. So I feel like we are kind of missing out on some stuff, because part of the process of advertising with PPC is testing and always devoting some of that budget towards testing. Mm-hmm. But if we can spend $1,200 and they only want us to spend $600, well, we're going to have to make some cuts to things that we would rather prefer to do. So I don't know if there's a ratio, but I guess there's times when you see it and it just feels wrong. Mm-hmm. That's not very qualitative, though, I know.
No, it's true. It's really true. A lot of times you're looking for other metrics, other factors that are informing that it's a bad idea. And then you could sort of look at it. I think for me, the number one factor is just, is there a lot of keyword starving going on? Like inside this particular ad group, are the bottom 10, 20, 50% of these keywords just getting no visibility? Is that because of an ad group limitation that Amazon has, or is it a budget issue? So sort of just looking at it, a lot of times with PPC, you have to look at it from a lot of different angles. And I think this is one thing that one does look at it with a lot of different angles. But hopefully by now, I'll never see ever again the keyword dump and product ad dump ever again. Is this how it works, Brent? You do a podcast on something and then it is gone forever?
Problem solved.
We've cured it. What other problems in the world should we cure?
Got them, boys.
Got them. Next week, I'll help everyone exercise regularly. I'm going to give you some pep talk. You're going to exercise regularly all the time. It's going to be great.
We're going to come out of COVID looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's right.
Yes. And then I'll give some advice on how to never be stressed ever again. That'll be good. Thanks, I'm cured. And no, seriously, PPC is one thing that's so complex and so complicated that it is so tempting to do the keyword and product dump. It is so tempting to do it. It is easy to do. You can just click, add all these products. You can copy and paste this keyword list and have it run. It is so tempting, but it is something that we must resist and spend that little extra time being a little bit more intentional about those keywords. You can still use those tools that give you a lot of different keyword ideas, but be more intentional about how you insert those into your campaigns and how you test those. Smaller groups generally work better than larger groups for so many reasons that we mentioned here. And I hope that we can start to see fewer and fewer accounts that have many, many keywords paired up in ad groups with many, many products. The keyword dump and product ad dump revisited for late 2020. And Brent, you have been guest co-host now for the last month. How has it been for you?
It's been fantastic. I've looked forward to this each week, and I think each of our episodes will stand as pretty good evergreen listening for people even 6 months from now, I hope.
Yes. I will have to have you back again for a future guest co-host in residence, because this was absolutely wonderful. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. We're going to continue speaking behind the scenes. I'm positive of it. and can't wait to have you back on the show. It is an absolute privilege. I'm going to pump you up once more. Where? I'll just tell people where to find you. I know where to find you. You can find Brent at AMZ Pathfinder, where he is the masterful CEO that I think there's very few people that fuse great Amazon PPC principles and really care about performance and really care about the craft. I was trying to tell someone this, I was trying to tell a prospect this about the care, the love and attention that you get to the craft of actually servicing Amazon advertising that isn't found in every person and every company, but it is alive and well with you, and it is nice. The force is strong in you. So it is a pleasure to be around you and learn from you. And I know that all of our listeners really appreciated getting cool outside perspectives from what I'm normally blabbling about.
Well, I think it just comes from a practitioner's mindset and, a long time of doing it. So practice makes perfect over the years.
Yes. Awesome, Brent. Well, we will have you back for sure. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.